Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something tonight that might save you years of pain, stress, and setbacks. See, trust is a beautiful thing, but misplaced trust can cost you everything. I've learned in life that not everybody deserves a front row seat in your life. Some folks don't even deserve to be in the building. And the sooner you understand that, the faster your life will change. First, never trust people who only show up when they need something. They don't call to ask how you're doing. They don't check on your mental health. They don't care about your struggle. But the moment they're broke, lonely, or stuck, here they come with a long story and short memory. That's not connection, that's convenience. Once their problem is solved, so are you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real about trust, because trust is one of the most powerful decisions you will ever make in your life. Trust can build you up, but if you give it to the wrong people, it can tear you down piece by piece. I've learned that trusting the wrong people doesn't just hurt your feelings, it can delay your destiny. See, life doesn't only test your patience, it tests your judgment. And one of the greatest tests is learning who deserves access to you and who does not. Not everybody who smiles at you is for you. Some people clap with one hand and hold a knife with the other. They laugh with you, eat with you, sit close to you. But deep down they're studying you, not supporting you. You have to understand that proximity does not equal loyalty. Just because someone is around you doesn't mean they are meant for you. Some people are assigned to your life to reveal your strength, not to share your success. Trust is earned through consistency, not words. Anybody can say they love you. Anybody can say they got your back. But when pressure comes, when things get uncomfortable, when there's nothing to gain from staying, that's when character shows up. Pay attention to who stays when it's hard, not just when it's fun. Because when the lights go off and the crowd disappears, the real ones don't leave. A lot of people lose years of their life because they keep trusting people who have already shown them who they are. They keep making excuses, saying maybe this time will be different. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I'm overthinking. No, you're not overthinking. You're accepting the truth. When someone shows you a pattern, believe it. Repeated behavior is a message, and ignoring it is a choice that comes with consequences. You have to be careful with people who only show up when they need something. They don't check on your heart. They don't care about your growth. They don't support your vision. But the moment they're in trouble, they remember your number. That's not love, that's usage. And if you allow people to use you, they will drain you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, then leave you empty when they're done. Another dangerous mistake is trusting people with your dreams before they're ready to hear them. Some people don't have the capacity to understand where God is taking you. You tell them your vision, and they laugh at it. You share your plans, and they minimize them. That's not honesty, that's insecurity. Never give fragile people responsibility over something sacred. Protect your dreams until they are strong enough to stand on their own. Trusting the wrong people can make you doubt yourself. You start questioning your worth, your decisions, your value. But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. You just gave the wrong people the right access. When you put gold in the hands of people who don't value it, they'll treat it like dirt. That doesn't change the value of the gold. It only exposes the ignorance of the holder. Ladies and gentlemen, wisdom is knowing that everyone doesn't deserve the same level of access to your life. Some people belong in the crowd, some in the audience, and only a few on the stage with you. You don't have to cut people off with anger, but you do need to step back with clarity. Distance is sometimes the most loving and intelligent decision you can make. As you grow, your circle should get smaller, not bigger. That's not arrogance, that's maturity. When you understand your purpose, you stop allowing distractions disguised as friendships. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trusting people who keep proving they can't be trusted. Trust is powerful, but discernment is priceless. When you learn to trust wisely, you protect your peace, your future, and your calling. And once you understand that your life will never be the same, ladies and gentlemen, let me share something that took me a long time to learn, and I paid for it with stress, heartbreak, and delay. Trusting the wrong people doesn't just hurt you emotionally, it confuses your direction. It clouds your judgment. It makes you second-guess decisions that were right from the beginning. One of the biggest mistakes people make in life is believing that everybody who is close to them is meant to go where they're going. Some people are only comfortable with you as long as you stay small. They like you when you're struggling because it makes them feel superior. But the moment you start growing, changing, elevating, their jokes turn into criticism. Their support turns into silence. That's when you realize they were never rooting for your success. They were rooting for your dependence. Never trust people who need you to stay broken so they can feel whole. You also have to watch out for people who talk a lot but show very little. They promise support, loyalty, and partnership, but when it's time to show up, they disappear. I'm always busy when you need them, but never too busy when they need you. Consistency is the language of trust. If someone's actions don't match their words, stop listening to the words. They're just noise meant to distract you from the truth. Another thing I learned is to be careful with people who constantly compare themselves to you. They don't celebrate your wins, they measure them. They don't feel inspired by your progress, they feel threatened by it. Comparison breeds resentment, and resentment destroys trust. These people may smile in your face, but deep down they're competing with you. And anyone secretly competing with you cannot genuinely support you. Never trust people who can't respect your boundaries. They get offended when you say no. They pressure you to overextend yourself. They make you feel guilty for protecting your time and energy. But boundaries are not walls. They are filters. People who truly care about you will respect your limits. People who benefit from crossing them will get angry. That reaction tells you everything you need to know. There are also people who disappear when life gets hard. When you're going through pain, confusion, or loss, they suddenly don't know what to say, so they say nothing at all. But when things improve, when you start smiling again, when success shows up, they come back like nothing happened. Loyalty is proven in difficult seasons. Anyone can celebrate you in sunshine, but only the real ones stand with you in the storm. Trust becomes dangerous when you ignore red flags because you're afraid of being alone. Loneliness has convinced many people to keep the wrong company, but being alone for a season is far healthier than being surrounded by people who drain you, discourage you, and derail you. Peace is expensive, and sometimes the price is letting go of people you hoped would be different. You have to understand that not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some people are lessons, not lifelong partners. Their role is to teach you discernment, strength, and self-respect. When you hold on to people who are only meant to pass through, you delay the arrival of people who are meant to stay. Ladies and gentlemen, maturity is realizing that trust should be given in levels, not all at once. Everyone doesn't deserve full access to your thoughts, your plans, and your emotions. Some people need to earn that privilege over time. When you rush trust, you rush disappointment. But when you move with wisdom, you protect your future. The moment you start trusting yourself more than you trust excuses, manipulation, and false loyalty, your life begins to shift. You stop begging for respect and start expecting it. You stop chasing validation and start valuing your peace. And once that happens, you will never again feel guilty for choosing yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when you realize that being kind does not mean being careless. And being loving does not mean being blind. Many people suffer not because they lack talent, opportunity, or faith, but because they trusted the wrong people with the right parts of their life. Trust is not just an emotion. It is a decision, and every decision has consequences. When you give trust without wisdom, you hand over control of your peace to someone who may not know how to handle it. One of the hardest lessons to learn is that some people don't want to see you win. They just want to see you close. They want access to your energy, your resources, your ideas, but not your elevation. They enjoy your presence, but not your progress. These are the people who subtly discourage you, who question your goals, who remind you of your past mistakes whenever you talk about your future. Never trust people who are more committed to who you were than who you are becoming. There are people who will study your weaknesses, not to help you grow, but to use them when it benefits them. They remember what hurts you, what scares you, what makes you doubt yourself. And when conflict arises, they throw those things back in your face. That's not honesty, that's emotional manipulation. Trust should feel safe, not strategic. If you constantly feel guarded around someone, that's your intuition speaking. Listen to it. Another mistake people make is trusting people who can't be happy for anyone else. They find something negative in every success story. If it's not happening to them, they don't see the value in it. These individuals carry unresolved disappointment, and instead of healing, they project it. When you trust someone like that, your joy becomes a trigger for their insecurity. Over time, they will try to shrink your excitement to match their comfort level. You also have to be careful with people who always need to be right. They don't listen. They wait to respond. They don't consider your perspective. They defend their own. Trust requires humility, and humility requires the ability to admit fault. Someone who never apologizes will eventually hurt you and blame you for feeling the pain. Accountability is the foundation of any healthy connection, and without it, trust collapses. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who betray you the deepest. Not because they are evil, but because they are unhealed. They carry wounds they refuse to face, and those wounds bleed onto everyone close to them. You try to love them, fix them, understand them, but you end up losing yourself in the process. You must understand that you cannot heal someone at the expense of your own well-being. Love without boundaries is self-destruction. Many people stay in unhealthy relationships because they confuse history with loyalty. Just because someone has been in your life a long time doesn't mean they deserve permanent access. People change, priorities shift, and sometimes growth creates distance. Holding on to the past can cost you the future. Trust should be based on present character, not past memories. Ladies and gentlemen, wisdom is recognizing when trust has turned into tolerance. When you keep accepting behavior that hurts you, disrespects you, or diminishes you, that's no longer patience. That's self-neglect. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, and when you stop allowing less, you make room for more. The most important trust you will ever build is trust within yourself. When you trust your instincts, you stop ignoring red flags. When you trust your worth, you stop chasing people who don't value you. When you trust your vision, you stop sharing it with people who can't see it. And once you learn that, you will never again give your heart to hands that are not capable of holding it. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most painful realizations in life is understanding that not everyone who walks beside you is walking with you. Some people are present in your life not to support your journey, but to benefit from it. Trusting the wrong people can slowly drain your confidence, your focus, and your peace. And most of the time it happens so quietly that you don't even notice it until you're exhausted. That's why discernment is not optional, it is necessary. There are people who enjoy access to you but resent your growth. They love your availability but hate your elevation. When you start improving, setting boundaries, or changing your mindset, they accuse you of changing as if growth is a crime. But the truth is, they were comfortable with the version of you that didn't challenge them. Never trust people who are offended by your progress. Anyone who truly cares about you wants to see you evolve, not remain convenient. You also need to be careful with people who thrive on drama. Chaos energizes them. They always have a problem, a complaint, or a conflict. They pull you into situations that leave you emotionally drained and mentally confused. Trusting people like this will cost you clarity because peace cannot exist where confusion is constantly invited. A calm life requires calm connections. Another dangerous group are people who only respect you when you're useful. As long as you're helping, giving, fixing, or sacrificing, they treat you well. But the moment you say no, the moment you need something, their attitude changes. Respect that is conditional is not respect at all. Trust should never be based on how much you can give, but on how much someone values you even when you have nothing to offer. There are people who constantly remind you of what you did wrong, but never acknowledge how far you've come. They keep you mentally chained to your past. Every mistake you make becomes a weapon they use to control you. Growth requires forgiveness, and trust requires grace. Never trust people who benefit from keeping you stuck in guilt while they move freely. Be cautious with people who cannot handle honest conversations. The moment you express how you feel, they become defensive, dismissive, or aggressive. They twist your words and make you feel wrong for having emotions. Trust cannot survive where communication is unsafe. If you're always walking on eggshells, that relationship is not built on trust, it's built on fear. Sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones who pretend to be neutral. They never take a stand. They avoid responsibility. When things go wrong, they disappear. When things go right, they reappear. They don't protect you, they protect their comfort. Trust requires courage, and anyone who refuses to stand for something will eventually fall for anything. Ladies and gentlemen, many people confuse being nice with being wise. You can be kind and still say no. You can be loving and still walk away. Protecting a peace does not make you selfish. It makes you mature. Not everyone deserves an explanation, and not every relationship deserves another chance. The moment you stop trusting people who repeatedly show you they cannot be trusted, your life begins to open up. Your mind becomes clearer. Your heart becomes lighter. Your focus becomes sharper. Trust is powerful, but it must be earned, protected, and given with intention. When you learn that lesson, you stop surviving life and start leading it. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most important lessons you will ever learn in life is that familiarity can make you careless. When people are close to you for a long time, you assume they understand you, respect you, and want the best for you. But time alone does not build trust. Character does. Some of the greatest disappointments come not from strangers, but from people you thought would never hurt you. That's why wisdom is learning to see people for who they are now, not who you hope they will become. There are people who listen to you, not to understand you, but to collect information. You think you're sharing your heart, but they're gathering details. Later, those same details show up in arguments, jokes, or private conversations with other people. Trust should feel safe, not exposed. Anyone who uses your vulnerability as ammunition has disqualified themselves from your inner circle. Be careful with people who always need to feel superior. They give advice you didn't ask for. They downplay your ideas. They make subtle comments that make you question yourself. On the surface, it looks like concern, but underneath it's control. They don't want to guide you. They want to stay above you. Trust cannot exist where respect is missing, and respect cannot exist where ego dominates the room. Another group you must watch closely are people who only support you when your dreams make sense to them. If they can't see it, believe it, or benefit from it, they discourage it. They tell you to be realistic, to slow down, to stop dreaming so big. But they were never given your vision, so they were never meant to understand it. Never trust people who try to limit you based on their own fears. There are people who avoid responsibility at all costs. When things go right, they want credit. When things go wrong, they want distance. They never apologize sincerely. They just explain themselves. Trust requires ownership. If someone can't admit when they're wrong, they will always find a way to make you wrong. Over time, that will wear you down. Some people stay connected to you only because of what you represent. Your success, your influence, your kindness, your resources. They don't see you as a human being. They see you as an opportunity. When life humbles you, or you stop giving as much, their interest fades. That's not loyalty, that's investment with conditions. Real trust exists even when there's nothing to gain. You also have to be careful with people who dismiss your intuition. You feel something is off, but they tell you you're overreacting. You sense disrespect, but they say you're too sensitive. Over time, you start doubting yourself. That's dangerous. Your intuition is not random, it's experience speaking quietly. Never trust people who teach you to ignore your inner voice. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest traps is staying connected to people because you're afraid of confrontation. You don't want to be misunderstood. You don't want to seem rude. So you tolerate behavior that slowly chips away at your peace. But every time you stay silent to keep the peace, you declare war on yourself. Trust should not require self-betrayal. Sometimes people don't betray you in one big moment. They do it in small ways over time. Missed calls, broken promises, lack of support, subtle disrespect. You keep excusing it because it doesn't seem serious enough. But patterns are louder than apologies. When someone repeatedly shows you where you stand in their life, believe them. The truth is, not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your plans, your fears, and your future. Trust is not about giving everyone a chance. It's about giving the right people a place. When you start valuing your peace more than people's approval, you naturally stop trusting those who don't protect it. Life gets lighter when you stop carrying relationships that were never meant to last. You don't need to hate anyone. You don't need revenge. You just need clarity. And with clarity comes freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest forms of wisdom you will ever develop is knowing when to pull back, when to be quiet, and when to protect yourself without feeling guilty. Life will introduce you to many people, but not all of them are meant to have access to your heart, your plans, or your future. Some people come close to you not because they respect you, but because they want what you carry. And if you don't learn how to recognize that, you will keep giving trust to people who don't know how to honor it. There are people who agree with everything you say, not because they believe in you, but because they don't want to challenge you to grow. They nod, they smile, they tell you what you want to hear. But when you need truth, correction, or honesty, they disappear. Trust requires truth, not comfort. Anyone who is afraid to be honest with you is more committed to keeping your approval than protecting your future. You must also be careful with people who rush intimacy. They want to know everything about you too quickly. Your past, your pain, your plans. They build fast connections and deep conversations, but there's no foundation. Real trust takes time. Anything that rushes closeness without consistency is usually hiding something. Slow trust is strong trust. Some people only respect strength, not kindness. When you are generous, patient, and forgiving, they take advantage of it. But the moment you stand firm, they call you difficult. That's not because you changed, it's because they lost control. Never trust people who only treat you well when you're easy to manage. Watch the people who never celebrate you publicly, but praise you privately. They don't want others to know they support you. They don't want to be associated with your growth out loud. That silence speaks volumes. Support that hides itself is often rooted in insecurity or jealousy, and neither one belongs in a circle of trust. There are people who keep you around as a backup plan. When things aren't working in their life, they lean on you. When things improve, they disappear. You become their emotional shelter, not their priority. Trust cannot survive where you are optional. You deserve consistency, not convenience. One of the hardest truths is realizing that some people only love the benefits of knowing you, not the responsibility of respecting you. They enjoy your presence but ignore your boundaries. They want your energy but reject your standards. Trusting someone like that will slowly teach you to accept less than you deserve, and that is a dangerous habit. Ladies and gentlemen, never trust people who laugh at your discipline. When you decide to work harder, live cleaner, focus more, they mock it. They call you boring, obsessed, or unrealistic. That's because your discipline exposes their excuses. Anyone threatened by your self-improvement is not someone you should trust with your future. Pay attention to how people act when you're no longer useful to them. When you stop fixing their problems, funding their habits, or carrying their emotional weight, their reaction will reveal their intention. Real relationships don't collapse. When roles change, they adapt. You also need to understand that some people are not evil. They are just not aligned with you, and that's okay. But misalignment does not mean you should force trust. Compatibility matters. Values matter. Direction matters. Trusting people who are going the opposite way will always pull you off course. The strongest form of protection is self-respect. When you respect yourself, you stop explaining your worth. You stop over-giving. You stop trusting words without evidence. You stop making room for people who bring confusion instead of clarity. At some point, you have to trust your growth more than your guilt. Guilt will tell you to stay connected out of history. Growth will tell you to move forward with wisdom. And when you finally choose growth, you realize that trust is not about closing your heart, it's about opening it to the right people. Your future requires focus. Your peace requires boundaries. Your destiny requires discernment. And once you learn to trust wisely, you stop losing sleep over people who were never meant to walk the whole journey with you.